led by America, actually made great technological advances and has led to the society that we have today and the standards of living that we have in our country today. And those should not be taken for granted. For the last 4 years, I lived over in Shanghai, China. I grew up here in Nazareth. I'm a chemical engineer. I went over there to go work. And you see how people live. And you see that how liberty is over there. And it's very, very different. Next slide. So the Constitution was ratified in 1787. 5 years later, they passed the Coinage Act of 1792. In the Coinage Act, they defined a constitutional dollar as 371.25 grains of silver, which is about equal to 24 grams of silver. This coin that I have right here is 31 grams of silver, 1 troy ounce. It also pegged the silver dollar to gold grams. What I have here is a 1 ounce gold coin. If anyone has not held a gold coin afterwards, I'll be sticking around as much as I can. It's actually pretty heavy. It's 3 times heavier than steel. Next, altering with the weight or fineness of the coins was punishable by death. If someone debased the coins, and counterfeited money in the mint, or if they embezzled metal from the mint, it was an automatic penalty. They were guilty of a felony and then given death. Last thing, the penny and later nickels, they were actually forms of copper-based fractional money. And they were redeemable for gold and silver coin. So what they were is basically coins that you could take, like if you had 20 nickels, you could take them and exchange them for a constitutional dollar, which was 24 grams of silver. Next slide. This is just the text from the Coinage Act. Next slide. Again, it'll be on the website tomorrow. And so my main point is money equals a mass of silver or gold. And a few more things actually from the Constitution as evidence, and there's actually a lot more. You can go into this in a lot more detail. There's a great book by Douglas Nazo written Honest Money, and some of the books that we have here will actually go into more detail. But from the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, tax or duty may be imposed on importation not exceeding $10 for each person. Now to us, this was actually for a migration law. And they were setting a maximum on the tax for importing new people to the United States. They did not, it sounds like, $10, like, oh, no big deal. But actually back then, $10 was quite a bit of money. In suits of common law, where the value of controversy shall exceed $20. This was in the 7th Amendment, which was ratified in 1791. So again, they're setting amounts because a dollar is just, or was, a dollar was just a mass of silver. Next slide. Okay, the next part of the talk is actually going to be on our current monetary system. So I wanted to give a great quick overview and then go through basically what the Federal Reserve does when they create new money. The banking system basically works by, like, let's say you get $100, you're paid $100. You go to the bank, you put the $100 into the bank. What starts off is you have $100 in deposits, and the money supply is also $100. Next slide. The bank then takes that money, and this is Citibank, Bank of America, KMBT, it doesn't matter which bank. They take that money and they loan it out. Say they loan it to me. I go out and I buy a house with it or a car. So the total money supply has not yet changed. And I do actually want to highlight a quote here from Henry Ford. And he said, quote, that it is well enough that the people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe that there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Next slide. So I take my $90, I give it to, I buy it with the car, and that car dealership takes the money to the bank. The bank puts the $90 in, they keep $9, and they loan out the other $81. So what has happened? The monetary system has expanded by $90. Next slide. And then they do this again. So it goes out again to somebody else. They buy something, it goes back to the bank, they loan it out to somebody to buy a home, they create more dollars. Next slide. And what's left, actually, over a series of months, is pretty much $900, in this example, $900 of loans for the $100 that you put into the bank. This is money, this is credit that is created out of thin air. Most of the money in our country exists in the form of electrons. They actually aren't even this paper here. If you go to a bank, most of the time they actually won't have the paper to cover the deposit. Okay, so a couple of things. This process, especially, I heard this for the first time. I figured it out like about a year and a half ago or so. It's actually complete nonsense. Like you'd think, how can they possibly do it? But I assure you, it is all true. Everything that I got is actually from sources from the Federal Reserve. There'll be like clickable links in this article, and we have more information on the website. Next slide. All right, so that's actually how it works on the banking level. Money is also created in a second way by the Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank is a quasi-private banking cartel that has a monopoly over our money supply. The way that the Fed works is that they can create or destroy dollars. So not just create, but they also have the power to destroy dollars and get rid of them. The Federal Reserve does their main method, they also manipulate interest rates, but their main method of doing this is by conducting open market operations where they can purchase or sell any type of asset, any type. It could be a home, it could be commercial real estate. Typically in the past, for like the last 20 years or so, they buy U.S. Treasuries. So I will use that in the example. However, you should be very aware that very recently they've been buying what's called toxic debt. Like they've been buying corporate stock of AIG, General Motors, whatever. They're creating the money out of thin air. When they do this, those assets are not worth that, but they're doing it to basically prop the entire system up. Actually, if you could go back for a sec. This is a quote from the former president of the Bank of England, which was the Central Bank of England. And he said, "Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave them the power to create deposits. And they will, with a flick of a pen, they will create enough to buy it back." Next slide. Okay, here's what happens when the Fed buys the treasuries. The first step is the Open Market Committee, which is abbreviated FOMC, they decide to expand the money supply. So let's say they're going to, the example I used here was $100 billion in treasury bonds. And they are doing this every week. I believe it was 2 weeks ago, it was $146 billion. So this is a fictional example, but it's actually occurring right now. The way that this works is the Fed writes a check on itself for nothing. Absolutely nothing. And like I asked the question here, where did it get the money? It didn't get the money from anywhere. It just wrote a check. It has the power to do that. So this $100 billion check is then used to go to one of the selected government bond dealers who buy the treasuries from the Department of the Treasury. These are primary dealers such as JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, I believe Bank of America. It's pretty much all the ones. So what ends up happening is, so now they get this Federal Reserve notes, and the Fed has the treasuries. What then occurs is that the dealer, and most of this actually goes on in New York City, they shuttle the deposits back and forth very quickly over the period of like 2 weeks. And what they do is they generate an additional $900 billion in loans. So like last week when they created $146 billion, you're talking over $1 trillion of credit, or a possibility of that much was created. Next slide. Okay, that is actually the end of the presentation. I want